Hey guys, tonight we travel far, far back, before Rome, before Greece, even before the pharaohs built their pyramids. You're in ancient Mesopotamia now, somewhere around 3200 BCE, and you're trudging through a muddy reed field under the stars. There's a heavy stillness in the air, except for the occasional splash of something vaguely amphibious in the canal nearby. You're heading toward flickering oil lamps in the distance. Someone's brewing, and you're just in time for Rations Day. You cross the edge of Uruk, a bustling city made mostly of mud brick and stubbornness. Everything smells vaguely like barley porridge and something more fermented. Your feet ache already, and it's not even sunrise. Welcome to one of the world's first urban centers, where ziggurats loom like massive sandcastles and bureaucracy lurks behind every stone threshold. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. Always fun to see who else can't sleep. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pass under a gate flanked by mud brick lions with crumbling faces and follow a trail of oil lamp smoke. It's ration day, which means hundreds of workers have dragged themselves out of bed to shuffle in lines and murmur under their breath. Most are here for the same thing, their daily beer allotment. You heard that right. In Sumer, beer isn't just a treat. It's currency, sustenance, religion, and office drama all rolled into one frothy ceramic jug. A supervisor waves a bone-thin arm and bellows something about missing tokens. The crowd groans, already preparing for an extra hour of standing around. You drift closer, your clay marker clutched in a sweaty palm. It's not worth much, maybe a pint, two if you're lucky, but it's your ticket to not passing out in the heat later today. Around you, barefoot workers scratch their arms, farmers smell like damp straw, and everyone has that morning after barley hangover days. You overhear someone grumbling about how the guards got double rations last week. Typical, no one's had enough water, but everyone's about to get beer. That's just the way things go around here. Up ahead, a group of scribes huddle over clay tablets, muttering and poking them with thin reeds. They look bored and slightly smug, like they know no one can read what they're writing. And to be fair, most can't. These are the elite accountants of Uruk, and they guard the beer like it's liquid gold. One of them glances up and scowls at you for standing too close. You take half a step back. The tablets in front of him are neatly arranged with rows of strange impressions, wedge shapes, dots, tiny barley icons. Historians believe this is the earliest form of proto-cuneiform. Think of it like scribbled shorthand for 3 jugs, no foam. And it works, kind of. A woman with tired eyes finally gets called forward. She offers a little clay token in exchange for 2 ceramic jars, both sealed with a lump of fresh clay bearing her household's mark. She cradles them like newborns. You watch her disappear into the crowd, clutching her payment for a week's weaving work. She didn't get rich, but she won't starve either. By now, you're almost to the front. A teenage boy is arguing that his token got wet and doesn't count anymore. The scribe barely looks up before flicking the soggy lump back at him. No mark, no beer. Fair is fair, even when it's petty. Your token is still dry. Miraculous. You step forward, offer it up, and wait. The scribe leans in, squints, jots something tiny on a clay tablet, and jerks his head toward a large jug behind him. A helper ladles out your ration, tepid, slightly foamy, and very much filled with floaty bits. You take a sip. It's thick, sour, and weirdly comforting. Beer in Sumer isn't beer like you know it. It's closer to a barley smoothie, sometimes flavored with dates or herbs, often drank through a straw to avoid the chunky bits. You tell yourself it's an acquired taste. As you slump against a wall and sip, you overhear two elders grumbling about the new grain measures. Apparently, the temple is short on emmer wheat again. Historians still argue whether this was due to overuse of farmland or climate shifts, one of them says. Okay, fine, they don't actually say that, but imagine it whispered through a long, philosophical yawn. Anyway, the elders reminisce about how, in their day, scribes didn't need so many marks to record a single jar. Now they write a whole poem just to say barley beer, one measure, one mutters. You chuckle and keep sipping. Someone behind you collapses into the dust, probably skipped dinner last night, maybe two. A temple guard helps him up, muttering something about redistributing portions. Everyone nods solemnly, pretending they're not all hoping for a little extra from the mess-up. You think about how weird this is, an entire city humming around beer rations and clay notes. But here in Uruk, it's normal. Beer is breakfast, lunch, and sometimes a religious offering. It's recorded, tallied, gifted, stolen, spilled, and worshipped. And all of it depends on whether that little clay token holds up through the heat. You toss back the last gulp. It sloshes down your throat like lukewarm oatmeal, and you kind of like it now. You head toward a shaded corridor along the outer wall of the temple. It's quiet there, just the low murmur of scribes and the occasional buzz of flies. Behind the columns, more clay tablets are being shaped, inscribed, and set in the sun to dry. You pause by one scribe's station. His hands are fast, practiced. You recognize the shape: barley, beer, a jar, and the worker's identifier. It's a system that's barely born and already indispensable. A nearby scribe sighs loudly. This whole system will collapse if someone drops a jar. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. Happened last week. 6 broken, and nobody could remember who owned what. You try not to laugh through your nose. By now, the morning sun is sliding up over the horizon, casting gold across the mud brick walls. You glance back at the crowd. Still hundreds waiting, some impatient, some resigned. The day's barely begun, and the wheels of ancient admin are already groaning into motion. You tuck your empty jar under your arm and move toward the temple gates again, your tokens spent, your belly slightly full, and your curiosity officially awake. You shuffle past a stray goat chewing on what's either a reed mat or someone's sandal. Doesn't matter. Ahead, a low hum of conversation rises from the courtyard, mixing with the wet slap of feet on mud and the occasional bark of a clay seal official. You wander toward a raised stone bench where temple scribes sit, not unlike bureaucrats at the world's first DMV, except the smell here is barley mash and sun-warmed goats. It's mid-morning now, and the beer line has splintered into smaller queues. One is for brickmakers, another for irrigation diggers, and another for priests who look very put out at having to wait it all. Everyone's beer ration is different, and every entitlement is recorded on those bizarre little tablets. You lean in to examine one closely. It's soft, freshly etched, and drying in the sun. The marks are strange. Triangles, crosses, half moons. You recognize the barley symbol now. It's shaped like a headless arrow pointing left. The scribe dots it 3 times, followed by a simple bowl shape. That means 3 measures of beer. You blink. Congratulations. You've just read one of the earliest payslips in history. A heavy-browed man next to you mutters, "If I dig 2 more days, they'll owe me 1.5 jars." You nod, pretending you understood that was the rate for canal laborers this month. It changes often. Priests decide. The priests always decide. In this strange little economy, beer isn't just liquid. It's a metric. It tells you who worked, how hard, and for whom. The more beer you get, the more valuable you are. You begin to realize that you've stumbled into a civilization built on foamy math. The temple, with its cool corridors and buzzing fly population, is the beating heart of the whole setup. Inside, priests count grain, issue commands, and occasionally whisper to gods. But mostly, they do accounting, not with calculators or even numbers, but with pebbles, clay, and a truly heroic amount of patience. You follow the slope of a ramp up toward the main grain room. It's dark inside, except for slivers of light between the bricks. Bins stretch out across the room, filled with wheat, emmer, barley, each labeled in the same cuneiform scribble you saw earlier. Sacks are tied with string and sealed with clay stamps. No one touches anything without permission. A young girl scurries past you, balancing a wide dish filled with something that smells vaguely like boiled fungus. Behind her, a temple overseer clicks his tongue and points to a cracked clay token on a nearby shelf. Historically speaking, you mumble to yourself, this was probably the beginning of centralized resource management. Your reward for this insight? A gnat flies straight into your mouth. You spit it out. Dignity remains optional. As you edge around a broken amphora, your foot knocks over a small bowl of beer. Someone's breakfast. The guard doesn't see it. You shuffle on before anyone blames you. In a side room, older scribes debate the merits of measuring in gur versus sela. They argue in half-grunts, like old men trying to remember if they locked the front gate. Historians still argue whether the Sumerians standardized these units across cities or if each temple played fast and loose with its own definitions, one of them might say, if he had access to a podcast. One interesting thing you notice, not everyone here is male. Some of the scribes are women, particularly in the brewing quarters. In fact, women dominate beer production. The goddess Ninkasi, after all, is the patron of brewing, and her worship is basically a state-supported endorsement of female labor power. Outside the granary, a supervisor yells that the reed baskets are overdue for collection. You pretend not to hear. A sudden whistle blows across the courtyard, signaling the next group to receive rations. You lean against the sun-warmed wall, thinking about the scope of it all. The Sumerians aren't just drinking beer. They're moving it, trading it, weighing it, taxing it. Every step is counted. Every bowlful traced, and every single record is on clay. You glance toward a pile of discarded tablets near a waste pit. They're broken, accidents perhaps, or records that were no longer valid. A dog naps on top of them, snoring into the ruins of 1,000 forgotten barley loans. You wonder what your own digital trash pile might look like to someone in 5,000 years. Probably nothing as cute as this sleepy temple dog. Then something catches your eye. A cracked tablet, still partially readable, shows a symbol that doesn't quite make sense. A barley sheaf crossed with a foot? You pick it up, brush it off. The meaning is unclear. Some scholars think it might denote beer reserved for travelers. Others believe it indicates a distance-based ration, like a fuel surcharge, but with grain booze. And then there's always the fringe theory that it simply meant spilled beer, no refund. Honestly, it could be any of the above. Sumerian writing was just starting to evolve, and symbols were fluid. There was no Oxford comma. Heck, there wasn't even Oxford. Back outside, the heat has climbed. The beer line is thinning. You spot the priest from earlier, now reclining under a woven awning, sipping his ration from a delicate cup. He catches your eye and lifts it in a silent toast. You raise your empty jug back. Mutual respect. Nearby, a few children play a game involving small clay balls, tossing them into baskets. One misses, and the ball shatters on the ground. Inside are 3 tiny pebbles. You freeze, then laugh. It's not a toy, it's an accounting token. They were playing with financial records. Imagine if your kids use tax forms as origami. You watch them for a while, wondering how many tablets like this still lie buried under layers of sand and time. Records of lives, payments, rations, names, all sealed in clay and forgotten. Until now. Somewhere behind you, a scribe drops his stylus with a groan. Another day of barley tallies, temple demands, and beer math. You stretch your back and consider your next stop. You're beginning to see the full picture, and it all starts with something deceptively simple. A city where your worth is measured in mushy beer. You wander back into the warmth of the courtyard, feeling the heaviness of the beer settle in your belly like a patient stone. Around you, the pulse of the city picks up. Carts creak, children shriek, and someone nearby is trying to convince a guard that the ration line cheated him. Spoiler, it didn't. Ahead looms the temple complex, its wide terraces stacked like a wedding cake built from sun-baked bricks and institutional dread. This isn't just a temple, it's the nerve center of the economy, government, and spiritual life. And yes, that includes beer management. You duck under an awning and enter the cool shadows of the ziggurat's lower levels. Inside, it's hushed. Reed mats soften your footsteps, and flickering lamps throw elongated shadows across the packed dirt floor. A sharp scent of drying grain fills your nose, with a touch of something vaguely sour, fermenting, always fermenting. This is where the real decisions get made. You pass by 3 elders deep in discussion over grain yields, one of them tapping a clay tablet with a reed pen like it's a whiteboard marker. They don't look up. Their foreheads are shiny with sweat, and their expressions say everything. Too little barley, too many workers, not enough rain, and definitely not enough beer to go around. You pause at a side room where younger scribes are being trained. A clay slab sits on each low desk, next to a basket of tokens, round ones, cone-shaped ones, some with notches or holes. The instructor holds up a lump of clay and begins. A cone means 1 unit of grain, a sphere, 1 unit of oil, a cylinder, beer, obviously. The students nod and begin pressing the tokens into a pliable tablet, like children learning multiplication tables, except instead of numbers, it's shapes. And instead of math, it's survival. One kid drops a token. It bounces under the mat. He scrambles to recover it, eyes wide. Everyone saw. The message is clear. Lose the token, lose the beer. This is serious. You sit near the back, watching the slow miracle of administration unfold. Historians still argue whether these token systems were standardized or if each city made up its own fiscal spaghetti. Either way, it worked. And it was enough to keep thousands of people fed, paid, and just tipsy enough not to revolt. You scratch your neck. It itches from the temple dust. Your clay token from earlier is still tucked in your belt sash, cracked now, its purpose served. You turn it over in your fingers and imagine all the other tiny markers circulating through Uruk, each one a physical promise. In a neighboring chamber, officials weigh out actual sacks of barley. Each is tied and stamped with a seal, often a carved cylinder rolled across fresh clay, like a little ancient receipt printer. One man holds up a string of tokens like a beaded necklace, then slips them into a hollow clay ball the size of a fist. A bulla, as the scribes call it. You blink. This is new. The man seals the bulla with fresh clay, presses a family crest into its surface, and sets it on a shelf to dry. Inside, it rattles softly, a ball full of promises. When you want your beer, you crack it open and present the tokens inside. Simple, brutal, effective. It's essentially a one-time use password made of mud. Outside, the city is humming again. Workers head to the kilns, fields, and canals. Most carry nothing but a jug, a token, and hope that the rations won't be short today. You see someone trip and drop a clay ball. It shatters. The tokens spill like marbles. Everyone nearby winces. It's like watching someone accidentally delete a spreadsheet before saving. You help the poor guy gather them. He nods in gratitude, and you note that some of the tokens have little incised dots, tally marks, quality indicators. Historians still argue whether these additions were formal, improvised, or just someone doodling in frustration. In a small alcove near the temple kitchen, you find a curious little altar. It's covered in beer foam and tiny clay figurines, offerings to Ninkasi, the goddess of beer. You recognize the tune someone's humming nearby. It's from the hymn to Ninkasi, one of the earliest known recipes ever written. And yes, it's a recipe in verse. The lyrics go something like, "Born of the flowing water, you are the one who waters the malt set on the ground." It's a love song to fermentation, very on brand. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the soft murmur of water dripping from a nearby jar, the scratch of reed pens, the distant calls of oxen. There's a rhythm to this place, a slow, muddy heartbeat powered by grain, sun, and just the right amount of yeast. A scribe beside you laughs under his breath. Imagine trying to track all this with just memory. He lifts his stylus like a sword. The pen protects the pint. You smile, a cheesy line, sure, but you respect it. You continue deeper into the temple, where clay shelves line the walls like dusty libraries. Each tablet contains lines of wedge-shaped text, records of barley distributions, workforce tallies, and beer owed to everyone from bakers to bricklayers. You spot one that simply reads, 30 jars lost to flood. A shrug, immortalized in mud. You run your fingers across the impressions. They're tiny, precise. Someone sat here, maybe 5,000 years ago, scratching these lines by lamplight while trying not to sneeze on their work. It's oddly intimate, like reading someone's planner minus the inspirational quotes. Near the rear of the archive is a locked room. A high-ranking priest opens it briefly to admit a fellow scribe, and for a moment you glimpse shelves with gold-inked seals, detailed pictographs, and a jug resting in pride of place. That jug? It's ancient even by Sumerian standards, a ceremonial ration vessel, perhaps, or the world's first beer mug trophy. Historians aren't sure, but it's old, revered, and probably never actually cleaned. You step back into the sun, your eyes blink in the brightness. Behind you, the temple ziggurat rises, baking gently under the weight of centuries. Inside it, the beating brain of Uruk, the temple economy, keeps track of every single barley grain, every bubble of beer, and every dusty little promise sealed in clay. All for one reason, to make sure nobody gets shorted on their drink. You wander past the temple gates again, this time toward the quieter edge of town, where the streets narrow and the air smells like last week's fish market. There's less shouting here, fewer carts, and way more chickens. The dust kicks up as you walk, and somewhere nearby, someone is definitely overcooking lentils. Again. But you're not here for cuisine. You're here for something weirder. Down a narrow alley flanked by reed fences, you duck into a small workshop where the real magic begins, counting things without numbers. No digits, no calculators, no 1, 2, 3, just pebbles, balls of clay, and sheer abstract genius. Inside the workshop, it's cool and quiet. A scribe sits cross-legged beside a low table. He's molding soft clay into a small, palm-sized disc. Beside him, a shallow bowl contains various shaped tokens, cones, spheres, pyramids, and even a few shaped like miniature boots. You resist the urge to pick one up and make trotting sounds. He gives you a look, you sit down. This, you learn, is where accounting begins. No one's invented numbers yet, at least not in the way you're used to. You want to record 6 jars of beer? Cool. You don't write 6. You press 6 little cone-shaped tokens into a wet clay disc. Want to track different goods? Use different shapes. A sphere means oil. A tetrahedron? Goat. Why not? It's like a board game invented by someone who drank too much of their own inventory. The scribe turns the disc in his hand, checking that the impressions are evenly spaced. Each token has meaning, he explains, not just by shape, but by how many and what you group them with. He gestures to a second disc, this one with tokens pressed in a circle around a central seal. This shows a delivery, 5 beer jars, 1 worker, approved by priest Dumuzi. You nod. It's both simple and maddening. Everything here is symbolic, material objects used to represent quantities, transactions, and obligations. Imagine trying to remember how much someone owes you by how many corn-shaped pebbles you stuck in a pot last week. You begin to appreciate how sharp these folks really were. One thing historians still argue about, whether the tokens were always meant for accounting or if they began as religious offerings. Some think early temples tracked divine donations with them. Others say it started with livestock tallies. Either way, the idea caught on like beer in summer. At a table nearby, 2 apprentices play a matching game. One rolls a clay bulla, a hollow sphere with a gentle shake. It rattles. Inside are tokens sealed for delivery. They try to match the token count to external marks on the shell. It's part logic puzzle, part quality control. The older scribe interrupts. Only break the bulla if you must. He gives a sideways glance. They're annoying to reseal. You smile. The more you listen, the clearer it becomes. This isn't just record keeping. It's trust management. The clay is the middleman. You don't need to remember who promised what. The bulla remembers for you. You're shown a rare piece, a bulla cracked open centuries ago. The tokens inside still sit in perfect order, untouched by time, as if they've been waiting to be remembered. You stare at them, 4 barley cones, 1 oil sphere, and a flat disc probably representing labor. Someone's old paycheck, never redeemed. A ghost salary. The scribe chuckles softly. Sometimes they forget to come collect. Outside, the wind picks up, rustling the reeds and carrying the scent of baked clay from nearby kilns. You glance out the door and see rows of tablets drying in the sun. More records, more shapes, more fragments of economic poetry. You ask a question that's been bothering you. Why not just draw the tokens instead of hiding them inside clay balls? The scribe sighs like someone explaining email to a grandparent. Eventually we did, but at first, people trusted what they could hold. A picture is nice, but a pebble in your hand, that's real. You nod, makes sense. Tokens were tactile, they had weight. You couldn't fake that. And here's a quirky little tidbit. Some of these token shapes were deliberately awkward to forge. Imagine trying to mimic a double-notched triangle with 4000 BCE tools. It's like trying to counterfeit Lego bricks without injection molding. Not impossible, but a real pain. You look over to a shelf where dozens of unused tokens sit, waiting to be called into duty. Most are made from the same local clay as the bullae and tablets, but a few stand out, made from limestone or even bitumen. Those are probably ceremonial, or maybe just someone showing off. You hold one of the limestone cones in your hand. It's surprisingly smooth. Someone shaped this 5,000 years ago, pressed it into a lump of clay, and trusted it to carry meaning. It's humble and astonishing. There's something oddly modern about this entire setup. The idea of tokens representing quantities, bundled and sealed with authority, is weirdly similar to digital tokens today. NFTs, crypto ledgers, just replace blockchain with sun-dried tablets and you're there. Give or take 5 millennia. The workshop quiets again. One scribe yawns deeply, his eyes watery from squinting at tiny marks all morning. You stifle a yawn of your own. It's infectious. Sleep lurks just behind your eyes. You wonder how many of these tokens survive out there in the sand. Thousands, tens of thousands, each one silently holding a story no one remembers. A barley debt, a goat gift, a beer promise that no one came back for. You lean back against the reed wall, closing your eyes for just a moment. The air smells like dust and damp clay. Somewhere nearby, a water jug drips slowly, rhythmically. The workshop murmurs on. You don't know how long you sit there, minutes, maybe hours. But eventually, a soft cough rouses you, and the scribe offers you a token, blank, unused. Take it, he says. You never know what you'll need to promise. You cradle it gently, warm from his hand. Somewhere in the distance, another ration bell clangs. You step back out into the brightness of Uruk's midday sun, clutching that blank clay token in your hand. It's nothing, Technically, no symbol, no seal, no official stamp of approval, but it feels possible. Like you're carrying the potential for a beer or two, if only you knew the right person to impress it with. Ahead, temple workers file down a stone ramp carrying tightly packed bundles of rushes and grain. But what catches your eye isn't them. It's the clink of something hollow being passed from one pair of dusty hands to another. A clay ball, about the size of an orange. Not just any clay ball, though. You recognize it now. A bulla. Smooth on the outside, sealed with a priest's signature, and just faintly rattling when shaken. Inside, tokens. Evidence. Value. It's an ancient delivery note, a contract, and a trust exercise all rolled into one. The worker receiving it cradles it reverently, then slips it into a satchel tied tightly against his chest. He's heading toward the brewery. You follow. The brewery isn't quite what you imagined. It's more of a shaded courtyard with big ceramic vats sunk into the earth. The air's warm and damp, thick with the smell of yeast, boiled grain, and something slightly funky you choose not to name. You immediately start sweating. A brewer stands beside a huge stone trough, stirring something the consistency of chunky soup with a paddle the size of a canoe oar. You peer in and see barley mash bubbling softly, speckled with bread chunks and floating date husks. This is Kos, Sumerian beer in its earliest, gloopiest form. The worker hands the bulla to a scribe, who cracks it open with a practiced tap against a stone slab. Tiny tokens fall out, 3 cones, a disc, and what looks like a sheep. Not a real one, just very figurative livestock. The scribe nods, scratches something into a nearby tablet, and waves the brewer forward. A jar is filled. The deal is done. You watch the shattered bulla on the floor and realize something quietly profound. This is a receipt, a one-time use biodegradable receipt for a beer transaction that will be recorded and stored in a dusty archive next to 800 others that look almost identical. Someone in the future will dig this up and say, "Ah, yes, Unit 122B received 3 barley beers and a goat-based lunch combo." The brewer hands off the jug, then goes right back to stirring the mash, sweat trickling down her arms. You recognize her. She was in the hymn earlier. Well, not her specifically, but her role. Women were central to beer production in Sumer. Not only did they brew it, they sanctified it. Brewing was sacred, and the people trusted women to get it right. You hear someone shout from across the yard. A child just dropped an unsealed jug. The beer splashes everywhere, mixing with dirt, reeds, and crushed dreams. The brewer winces. A younger boy fetches another jug without comment. There's something rhythmic about the entire process. Mash, pour, seal, record, repeat. It's soothing, if you don't mind the smell and the occasional drunk bee. Nearby, a new delivery arrives. This time, instead of a bulla, the scribe carries a small rectangular tablet, maybe the size of a modern phone. It's been impressed with tokens, not loose ones, but the images of tokens. And beside those impressions are new marks, tiny triangles and lines. You lean closer. The scribe notices and smirks. "Easier than breaking open mud balls all day," he says. "This way, you just look. It hits you. This is the beginning of the transition from clay tokens to pictographs, from real pebbles to written symbols, from physical to abstract. The Sumerians are basically mid-update. Historians still argue whether this shift was a gradual evolution or a top-down temple mandate to make everything tablet-friendly. Either way, you're watching the moment abstraction overtakes tactile trust, which means fewer rattling clay spheres and way more styluses. The brewer finishes her shift and wipes her brow with the edge of her tunic. You follow her out to a bench where she rests beneath a reed awning. "Been doing this for 20 years, she says. "Still don't know who drinks it all." You nod sympathetically, sipping from a communal jug someone left behind. It's warm, sour, and somehow satisfying, like liquid bread with commitment issues. The brewer lifts a token from her belt, carved, not pressed, a personal seal. "I keep this for my best batches," she says, rolling it between her fingers. "When the foam's just right and the gods are listening." You glance at the seal. It bears a barley stalk, a crescent moon, and what looks like a dancing frog. You don't ask. Some mysteries are better left intact. Elsewhere in the yard, a younger scribe is carefully pressing wedge-shaped marks onto a tablet, while his supervisor watches with the patience of someone who's seen many ruined deliveries. The tablet reads something like, "4 measures. Worker Enlil shoe accepted by brewmistress." It's a weirdly formal sentence for what amounts to beer IOU. But it works. Over time, more and more tokens will be replaced by these marks. The clay will stay, but the rattling will fade. Another quirky fact? Some bully had strings attached. Literally, workers would wear them like necklaces. Imagine a UPS delivery guy showing up with your package hanging from his neck in a sealed mud ball, stylish and secure. You take one last look at the shattered bulla pieces in the dust. They were once a container of value, and now they're just trash, but not meaningless. Each shard is part of a larger system, one that will someday become language itself. The sun starts to lower and the brewery winds down. You step outside, brushing clay dust from your sleeves, and think back to that blank token in your pocket. You could press it, shape it, give it meaning, or maybe leave it blank, like a wild card in a civilization slowly inventing memory. Either way, you walk away a little tipsier, a little wiser, and a lot more aware of just how much thought goes into a pint. The sun dips lower as you follow the scent of simmered barley and sweat toward the temple courtyard again. Only this time, something's different. The mood has shifted. Workers are clustered around one corner near the granary, voices low but tense. You squeeze past a mule gnawing on rope and hear someone mutter, "They broke it open early." You drift closer. At the center of the gathering is a shattered clay bulla, cracked clean in two, its tokens spilled into the dust. A scribe kneels nearby, trying to piece the halves together while his assistant lines up the tokens like puzzle pieces. A foreman looms over them, arms crossed, and a brewer stands at a careful distance, lips thin and twitching. This is no accident. Someone cracked the seal before the handoff. It's a big deal. See, breaking a bulla too soon is like opening your birthday present and finding out you only got socks before the party. It's a breach of trust. The bulla wasn't supposed to be opened until it reached the right hands. By cracking it prematurely, someone challenged the entire premise of the transaction. The assistant counts the tokens again. 4 barley cones, 1 labor disc, 2 sheep markers. They match the delivery request. Technically, everything adds up, but the trust is broken. The foreman frowns. And who says these are the original tokens? No one answers. You feel a ripple of tension in the heat. The brewer starts to walk away. Then the scribe speaks. We're switching to tablets. Gasps. Okay, not really, but a few heads do turn. He holds up a fresh clay slab with neat impressions. Pictures of barley, a jug, a person, a temple seal, no tokens, just marks. This is easier, he says. No rattling, no breaking, no one has to guess what's inside. You stare at the slab. This isn't just new, it's revolutionary. Instead of hiding the tokens in clay, they're now being represented on the surface. Impressions of the tokens, tiny pictographs, literal iconography. This is where the world begins to tip from object to symbol. A flat surface becomes memory. A stylus becomes authority. Historians still argue whether this shift was sparked by administrative headaches or a stroke of genius from a scribe who just hated making spheres. Whatever the case, tablets are taking over. The brewer sighs. So no more breaking things to prove things? The scribe shrugs. Unless you count egos. You step around the group and head toward the storage rooms, where clay shelves are beginning to reflect the new world. Some tablets are simple, just rows of barley cones and symbols for days of the week, which, by the way, the Sumerians hadn't invented yet, but you get the idea. Others are more elaborate, lists of workers, production stats, even complaint records. You spot one that reads, in essence, 2 jugs spoiled, worker denied extra ration, suspected negligence, ancient HR, baby. You smile as you realize the clay balls, the bully, are becoming obsolete, like floppy disks or fax machines. They'll hang around for a while, mostly because change is hard and nobody likes learning a new system. But their era is ending. In another room, you watch a training session. Scribes lean over freshly smoothed tablets, carefully pressing symbols in rows. Instead of using physical tokens to calculate barley owed, they now make symbols for tokens, simplified pictures of the thing they use to hold. A triangle means a container. A circle with dots, beer. A squiggly line, possibly received with complaint or just bad handwriting. One apprentice messes up and starts to scrape the tablet clean, only to snap it in half. The instructor sighs. Next time, make a draft on wax. You blink. Wax? Turns out they're experimenting with reusable surfaces now, temporary mediums where symbols can be practiced and corrected before being immortalized in sun-baked clay. It's the Mesopotamian version of a whiteboard. You wonder if any of those survived. Probably not, melted ages ago, but the idea stuck. As you watch, you notice how careful the scribes are about order. Columns matter. Placement matters. One symbol out of place, and suddenly you're delivering 3 oxen instead of 1. That's how wars start. You take a turn pressing a stylus into wet clay. It's trickier than it looks. The wedge shapes have to be firm, angled, and aligned. Too shallow, and the impression fades. Too deep, and you risk cracking the tablet. It's oddly meditative, like stabbing memory into mud. Nearby, a wall mural shows a procession of workers, each with a jug, each with a symbol above their head. Stylized, but meaningful. The message is clear. Work, record, reward, repeat. But here's the thing that really gets you. The more these people write, the less they need the physical tokens. Eventually, the pictographs evolve even further. They become abstracted, less about literal images, more about consistent shapes, standardized signs, and then cuneiform. But you're not quite there yet. For now, you're standing in the space between two worlds, the world of pebbles and spheres, and the world of script. You exit the room and step back into the courtyard. The foreman is gone. The cracked bulla has been swept into a bucket, and that tablet the scribe was holding, it's drying on a rack, soon to be filed, shelved, and possibly forgotten. You sit by a wall, your shadow stretching long in the amber light. You pull the blank token from your belt and stare at it again. It's oddly out of place now, like showing up to a Zoom meeting with a scroll. Still, you press it into the dust next to you. Just one shape, no marks, just presence. You wonder, if someone finds it thousands of years from now, will they think it meant something? Will they try to decode it? Will they argue in books and footnotes? Probably, that's what we do. The wind is starting to cool as dusk bleeds across the rooftops of Uruk, washing the mud brick city in warm amber. You follow the low, rhythmic sound of styluses tapping on clay, like soft rain on hard dirt. Down a corridor lined with torchlight, you slip into the scribe quarters, where a half-dozen exhausted figures are hunched over narrow benches. It's quiet, except for the occasional muttered curse and the gentle crack of a broken tablet. Welcome to the grind. Here, in these low-ceilinged rooms that smell like drying mud and feet, the great leap forward is quietly underway. The tokens are almost gone now, replaced by something infinitely more powerful and more annoying to get right. Cuneiform. You ease onto a reed mat and watch as one scribe rolls his shoulders and presses a triangle-tipped stylus into a fresh slab of clay. The mark it leaves isn't a drawing of barley anymore. It's not even a pictograph. It's a wedge, a shape, a symbol that, when paired with others, now stands for sounds. That's right, sounds. Language, not just objects. And suddenly, the game has changed. You're witnessing one of humanity's strangest revolutions, the shift from representing things to representing words. You no longer need a physical cone to mean barley. You don't even need a little drawing of a cone. You just need a wedge. 3 wedges in a row. Maybe add a tail. It's ugly, but it works. One scribe smirks. You'd be amazed how many ways you can write barley if you're just mad enough. He's not wrong. Scholars today still struggle to interpret early cuneiform because it evolved rapidly and chaotically. The same mark might mean barley, to tribute, or please let me go home, depending on the context. It's the original passive-aggressive font. Still, there's method to the madness. The scribes are building a system, a flexible code that can represent not just goods, but ideas. Now they can record contracts, prayers, insults, even love poems. Yes, Sumerians were surprisingly flirty on clay. And in the middle of all this progress, there's you, watching someone invent the alphabet one wedge at a time. Nearby, a young student scrapes off half a tablet and starts over. His stylus keeps slipping in the soft clay. The wedge shapes come out crooked, and his spacing is terrible. His teacher groans and grabs the tablet. Again. Slower, and stop making beer look like debt. people notice. You grin. Each tablet here is a time bomb of meaning, carefully baked or sun-dried, then filed away for a future argument. You pick one up, still damp, and read across the first line. A list of names and their daily rations. Not just beer anymore, but fish, onions, and bread. The temple's getting fancy. As you scan the marks, one stands out. It's not a name. It's something else. A squiggle with two tails. You ask the scribe. He leans over. That's the supervisor's signature. Stylized. Makes him feel important. So even back then, people had brand logos. Some things never change. The tools have evolved too. The styluses used to be simple sticks or reeds. Now they're carved, tapered, some even decorated. You spot one with a handle shaped like a little lion. Another has a hole for threading it onto a belt. Function meets flair. One of the scribes takes a break and hands you a test slab. Try it, just press, don't drag. You do. It's awkward. Your first wedge is too deep, your second is sideways, and the third just looks like an accident. He laughs softly. You'll get it, maybe. As you wipe your hands, the old master scribe nearby speaks without looking up. Words don't forget, he says. That's why the gods favor clay. That one lingers. Outside, you can hear the call of a street vendor selling date cakes. The clatter of carts echoes faintly from the city wall. But inside this scribe room, the world is still, focused. The only thing that matters is what gets etched into these small brown slabs. You glance at the master's shelf. It holds a dozen finished tablets, each marked with the date, the job, and the recipient. Some are sealed in clay envelopes with a summary on the front, a kind of executive summary before anyone opens the full text. And here's a detail most people miss. Some of these envelopes have matching internal and external records, like a two-step verification system. If the inner tablet doesn't match the outer label, fraud or incompetence, or both. Historians still argue whether this double record system was meant to prevent theft or just help forgetful priests keep track of stuff. You suspect the answer is yes. You're shown one of the oldest full cuneiform texts, still in rotation, a hymnal to the goddess Nisaba, patroness of writing and scribes. It's clumsy and beautiful, every line a tribute. The last line reads, "She who writes truth into the clay shall never go hungry." You wonder how true that really was. Probably depended on how well she documented grain shipments. In the corner, a boy dozes off mid-tablet, stylus still clenched in his hand. No one wakes him. They've all been there. Late nights, tense deadlines, the eternal struggle of handwriting clay memos before the light fails. You find a quiet corner and pick up one last tablet. It's older, simpler, a list of daily beer rations arranged by worker rank. High priests get 5 jars, farmers get 1, guards get 2, scribes get none. You raise an eyebrow, a quiet injustice. Maybe that's why they started inventing new words, like overdue and audit. The lamplight flickers lower. Outside, the sky is painted in soft purples and coppery pinks. You hear a distant laugh. Somewhere, someone's had just enough beer, maybe more. And here you sit, surrounded by the dusty bones of early bureaucracy. The mess, the beauty, the sheer stubborn creativity of it all. Writing has begun. and there's no going back. The streets are nearly empty now, except for a few lantern-carrying guards and some loitering cats who clearly outrank everyone. You stroll through the quiet, the clay still soft on your fingertips from earlier. Lantern light flickers along the walls, casting distorted shadows of figures long gone. Priests, scribes, laborers, and maybe someone just like you, trudging home with a beer jar in hand and a tablet in their satchel. You pass under an arch carved with worn symbols, most likely the temple's mark for provisions or allocations. Either way, it leads to the quarter where rations are distributed and disputes are quietly muttered about behind very wide backs. You're here for something very specific now, your daily beer allowance. You join a short queue of exhausted workers, field hands, brickmakers, canal dredgers, all quietly waiting under the heavy night air. There's very little talk. Everyone's too tired, and frankly, beer is serious business. A scribe at the front of the line is going tablet by tablet, calling out names and symbols. As each person steps forward, he checks a mark against a slab covered in neat cuneiform lines. The same symbols you saw earlier, now refined, standardized, weaponized bureaucracy. You inch forward and peek over his shoulder. There it is again, the barley sign, wedge-shaped and smug. Next to it, the symbol for sila, a unit of volume, a bit less than a liter. The workers around you are being given anywhere between 1 and 5 sila of beer, depending on what they did that day, and it seems how much the overseer likes them. A thin man in front of you is handed a modest jug. He glances at it and frowns. "This was 3 sila yesterday," he mutters. The scribe doesn't even look up. "Today you didn't sweat as much." Ouch! Beer isn't just refreshment here. It's part of your compensation package. No coin, no written contract, just fermented liquid bread and clay records. And the temple controls it all. You finally reach the front. The scribe eyes you, flicks through a few tablets, and jabs one with his stylus. 1.5 sila, labor class 3. He says it like he's assigning you a horoscope. You accept your jug with the reverence of someone receiving both dinner and social rank in one ceramic vessel. You take a sip. It's thick, sour, warm, and flecked with sediment. But there's a sweetness to it. Maybe dates, maybe just the satisfaction of being remembered in clay. You slump down onto a reed mat against the outer temple wall. Around you, others sip in silence or chat in low tones about harvests, canal floods, and that one guy who always seems to get 5 sila, even though he barely shows up. Nepotism, it seems, predates even metal tools. Nearby, a woman lifts her jug and snorts. "Smells like it fermented in someone's sandal." Her neighbor shrugs. "Still better than goat water," you chuckle. Everyone here knows that beer is safer than the river, especially if you're downstream of the cattle enclosures. The fermentation process kills the bad stuff. Germ theory hasn't been invented yet, but folks have definitely figured out what doesn't make them violently ill. And for the temple, that means control. By managing the flow of beer, they manage labor, productivity, loyalty, even mood. You notice that some jugs are stamped near the rim, tiny wedge symbols. A clever system for identifying batch size and possibly even quality. A crude early version of barcodes, if you squint. One jug sits untouched. Its owner hasn't arrived. The scribe glares at it, muttering. If he's not here by nightfall, it's mine. You get the feeling this rule wasn't written down, but is universally understood. Now, here's the weird part. There are dozens of tablets recording these allocations, each one with names, amounts, sometimes even flavor notes. One mentions smoked barley, another second fermentation. The scribes are turning beer into metadata, and historians love this. These tablets are some of the best preserved administrative documents in the ancient world. They tell us more about Sumerian daily life than any statue or royal inscription ever could. All because someone needed a receipt for 1.5 liters of ancient oatmeal juice. A fun side note, one fringe theory suggests that beer rations weren't just about calories. They were about social cohesion, shared beer, shared breaks, shared gossip, even shared indignation when someone else got more than you. You drain the last of your jug and wipe your mouth with the back of your hand. Not elegant, but culturally appropriate. Around you, the workers begin to scatter, some back to their homes, others to temple sleeping quarters. A few linger. One is definitely tipsy and may or may not be talking to a wall. You sit a moment longer, watching the sky fade from rust to ink. A soft breeze carries the scent of damp clay and smoke. Somewhere, a dog barks. Somewhere else, someone laughs too loud and gets shushed by 3 others. You pull out the small token you still carry. It feels obsolete now in this world of written marks and stylized sounds. But there's something comforting about it, tangible. It doesn't require translation. It just is. You rise, stretch, and walk the narrow path toward the scribe archives again. Just before turning the corner, you glance back at the scribe still perched behind the ration tablet. He's yawning now, nudging that unclaimed jug closer to himself with one foot. It's late, but the clay is still warm. The memory of the day is still soft. And somewhere on a drying tablet, your name, or something like it, is being recodited next to a wedge and a jug. You head east now, guided by the faint glow of torches reflecting off pottery jars and baked brick. The sound of the city has faded to murmurs, just frogs, footsteps, and the occasional splash in the canals. You're not entirely sure where you're going, but the warm scent of yeast and honey tells you one thing. The brew hut is still awake, tucked behind the temple's northeast wing, past a row of granary storage bins and a courtyard with 3 suspiciously loud goats. You find it. A low, smoke-darkened building with steam rising gently from vents in the roof. The doors are open, but the air inside is heavy and wet. You duck in, and your skin is instantly wrapped in warmth and grainy humidity. This is the beating heart of Sumer's beer production, and it smells like someone's been hard at work for a long, long time. At the center of the room stands a group of women, heads covered in linen wraps, arms dusted with flour and ash. They work in near silence, save for the occasional splash, clang, or whispered chant. Yes, chant, because here brewing isn't just chemistry, it's liturgy. One woman stirs a large vat with a flat paddle, rhythmically turning the frothy mixture while softly reciting a verse. Another sprinkles ground date pulp into a smaller pot, her movements practiced, reverent. This isn't just cooking, it's ritual. You creep closer and catch the words being spoken. Ninkasi, you are the one who waters the malt. You are the one who bakes the bread in the great oven. You freeze. That's the hymn to Ninkasi, a 4,000-year-old beer recipe hidden inside a poem. A genuine hymn to the goddess of brewing and simultaneously a step-by-step process for how to ferment, flavor, and survive in ancient Mesopotamia. And here it is, being sung. Still, you watch as they pour the boiled mash into wide ceramic tubs to cool. The steam fogs up the room. You can barely see the floor now, but you can smell everything. Wet barley, toasted bread, sour yeast, and maybe a hint of overripe dates. A novice brewer carefully places bapir, a kind of twice-baked barley bread, into one of the cooled vats. This bread is soaked to release its sugars, not unlike steeping a giant ancient tea bag, but alcoholic. Next, they add water from a sealed jar, probably from a sacred source. You hope it's not from the canal. The head brewer, an older woman with calloused hands and piercing eyes, moves between vats with the air of a high priestess. She taps a jug, sniffs, tilts her head, then nods. That one's ready. You lean in and see the bubbles forming. Fermentation. Life. You don't need to understand chemistry to recognize it. Something is waking up in the grain. Something fizzy, ancient, and mildly terrifying. And here's the thing. Women run the show here. Brewing in Sumer is a female-dominated craft. It's sacred, respected, and central to the economy. These women aren't just brewers. They're keepers of divine alchemy. They turn grain into beer, and beer into currency. One quirky fact, some high-ranking women were titled Sangha of the brewery, which roughly translates to administrator of the holy foam. You're not kidding. That's someone's full-time job. Imagine handing out that business card. You watch as the finished beer is siphoned into jars, sealed with waxy clay, and stamped with a sign of quality. Sometimes a seal, sometimes a pictograph, and sometimes just a thumbprint. One jar is handed to a waiting courier who immediately dashes off with it cradled like treasure, probably heading to a feast or temple ceremony. Others are tagged for ration distribution. Still others, for trade. The brewer sits beside one of the jars, gently humming to herself while engraving a clay tag. You peer over her shoulder. It reads, 2 Silla, dark beer, strong foam for Enhedu's son. Personalized and poetic. It's essentially an ancient growler order with a name on it. Historians still argue whether the different beer types had strict recipes or were just vibe-based brewing. Some texts mention strong beer, weak beer, clear beer, cloudy beer, even beer for the sick. Yes, medicinal beer. You're starting to suspect beer may have been the solution to every single problem here. A young girl carries in a basket of dried herbs, possibly coriander or maybe juniper, and hands them to the assistant brewer. She tosses them into a pot near the corner where a special batch is being prepared. Offerings only, she says firmly. You nod and take one step back. A few of the brewers gather around a low table to eat. Bread, onions, dried fish, and, you guessed it, beer. One of them offers you a sip from her mug. You take it. It's slightly sour, but light, almost fruity. Not as thick as the ration stuff. Trade beer, she explains. You serve the good stuff to strangers. You thank her and sit for a moment, the clay still warm in your hands. You ask how long it takes from mash to jug. One of them shrugs. A few days? Depends on the yeast. Sometimes the gods help. You're not sure if she's joking. They begin singing again, another verse to Ninkasi. This one's about pouring beer into jars of lapis and gold. You glance around. Most of their jars are chipped, dusty, and a bit moldy. You think maybe the goddess doesn't mind. The torches burn lower as the last batch is stirred, sealed, and set aside. You realize you've been sitting in the corner for a while, not saying much, just watching. It's hypnotic, the way their movements sync, the way the ingredients become more than the sum of their parts. And here's the secret the tablets won't tell you. This is where the economy actually lives. In the hush of the brew hut, in the hands that stir, ladle, and chant. You can track beer with tokens and tablets all you want, but it's here, in this warm cloud of yeast and patience, that it actually begins. You thank the brewer, pocket a bit of soaked bapir someone offers you. It tastes like beer-soaked sadness, and step back into the night. The sky is dusted with stars now. The air smells like roasted barley and clay. And the next jug of beer, somewhere out there, already has your name on it. You make your way back along a narrow side street, the kind where lantern light barely scrapes the walls and shadows carry conversations better than echoes. The air is cooler now, threaded with the comforting scent of wood smoke and roasted legumes. Most people are winding down for the night, but as you pass the edge of the scribal quarter, you notice a strange, subtle tension in the air. The scribes' windows are still glowing. Inside, young apprentices are gathered around a single flickering lamp, their styluses hovering nervously over freshly smoothed clay. Their teacher leans against the doorframe with his arms folded and a thin smile on his lips. "You all know what's expected," he says, voice low. But there's knowing, and then there's choosing. You stay quiet, pressing yourself into a dark corner, watching. Tonight's lesson isn't about barley measures or delivery records. It's about moral arithmetic. And apparently, someone in this room cooked the clay books. You scan the floor and spot a broken tablet, freshly snapped, still a little wet. The pieces show 3 beer symbols, but one of them is clearly too small. The wedge is uneven, rushed, and misaligned. A beer that didn't exist was given anyway. A bribe, a favor, a simple mistake. The master sighs. "I don't care if it's your uncle's ration. If it's not on the record, it's theft." There it is. You see the student, barely out of boyhood, bite his lip and stare at his ruined tablet. He doesn't protest. He doesn't have to. Everyone knows what happened, and everyone knows this isn't the first time. You can feel it. Office politics, Sumerian style. There's always someone who knows a shortcut. Always someone with a cousin in grain storage. Always someone who whispers, "Just adjust the mark. Who's going to notice?" And to be fair, most don't. Most don't even read. But the scribes? Oh, they notice everything. One whispers to another. Last month, he wrote the wrong figure for the canal crew. The other nods. Priest thought we were overpaying, cut their beer in half. A single wedge, one crooked mark, and someone ends up working 14 hours with no drink. You can almost hear the clay groan beneath the weight of unintended consequences. You glance up at a shelf nearby. Dozens of tablets line neatly in a row, each one a tidy lie or an honest reckoning. The difference? Sometimes only the scribe knows. And here's the kicker. These tablets are never destroyed casually. Even the broken ones are stored, sometimes sealed in jars, sometimes buried, sometimes handed off to temple archivists who don't ask questions. Why? Because in Sumer, written records have a soul. Break a tablet without permission, and you're not just erasing information, you're offending Nisaba herself, the goddess of writing. You're committing a spiritual accounting error, and that's the worst kind. The teacher finally steps forward and picks up the broken tablet. He studies the symbols, nods to himself, and sets it aside. No punishment, he says quietly, but you're copying tablets until the barley harvest. Oof. The boy lowers his head. The others exhale, half in relief, half in disappointment. It was a light sentence. They've seen worse. You slip outside as the students return to their work. The mood has lifted slightly, just enough. One apprentice quietly starts imitating the teacher's hand gestures behind his back. Another rolls her eyes and makes a face at the broken tablet as if it personally insulted her. It's not all sacred duty and administrative dread here. Sometimes it's just kids with styluses trying not to mess up someone's lunch order. You head toward the temple wall and spot another curious scene. A young woman sits beneath a torch, carving a personal seal into a small cylinder of soft stone. Her fingers are steady, her eyes sharp. This is her signature, her identity in the world of clay. It will be rolled across the face of every tablet she signs. It's legally binding, spiritually weighty. And also, she's chosen to carve a fish with a crown and a single teardrop. You raise an eyebrow. She notices. It's symbolic, she says. Don't ask. Fair. Seals are everywhere in Sumerian society. They're your key card, your passport, your bank pin. Priests have them, officials have them, even brewers and bakers have them. It's not enough to say you did something. You have to mark it. And here's the fun part. Forgeries exist. Oh yes, there are cases buried deep in dusty temple records where false seals were used to fake deliveries, redirect beer rations, or claim more than what was owed. Imagine an ancient identity theft scandal unfolding slowly over months, one jar of emmer beer at a time. Historians still argue whether these frauds were common or rare, but clay doesn't lie. Eventually, someone notices, and when they do, someone gets reassigned to canal sludge rotation. As the night deepens, you follow the corridor back toward the storage rooms, stepping past a guard snoring lightly against a pillar. His beer jug is empty and rolled on its side like a deflated ego. You find yourself in a small side chamber filled with returned ration jars. Most are sealed. A few have been opened, contents sampled, rejected, or consumed mid-delivery. Each has a tablet beside it. Sometimes the math doesn't match. Sometimes it does. But the scribes, they're always watching. You spot one tablet with a long line of symbols. It starts with worker returns surplus of 1 scylla. A rare event, a beer refund. You imagine the poor soul being shamed for drinking less than expected, probably lost status points in the temple cafeteria. You sit for a moment beside the returned jugs. The stone is cool beneath you. Somewhere above, you hear the faint echo of laughter and styluses clacking. Life goes on. You reach into your satchel and pull out your token again, that blank, unused little promise. You press it into the clay-dusted floor beside you and let it sit. A joke, a statement, a whisper to the gods of ink and error. Then you rise, quietly, and leave it there. Let the scribes figure that one out. You slip quietly through the rear courtyard of the temple complex, where the shadows stretch long and the clay walls glow faintly under the moon. A faint mist hangs in the air, part river vapor, part brewery fog, and the only sounds now are the slow drip of water into a broken jar and the shuffle of a single set of footsteps across packed earth. That last sound? Definitely not yours. You stop. From behind a storage shed, two figures emerge, cloaked in reed-woven wraps. One glances around, the other clutches a jar, sealed with a clay stopper that looks suspiciously fresh. You've seen enough beer containers today to know that one hasn't been through any formal accounting. And just like that, you've stumbled into something deliciously familiar: ancient embezzlement. You crouch beside a grain bin, heart suddenly pounding like you're hiding from the world's slowest, dustiest crime syndicate. The taller figure pulls out a seal stamp, rolls it over a nearby clay tablet with mechanical precision, and hands it off. The other person tucks it into their satchel and vanishes into the alley. Left behind, a swapped jug, still bearing the original seal, but probably filled with lower quality beer. You've just witnessed the Mesopotamian equivalent of a supply chain fraud, and no one even raised their voice. You stand slowly, quietly. The taller figure doesn't notice you, too busy inspecting the jar for inconsistencies. Then they walk away, vanishing into the temple's inner hall. Inside, the storage room is dim, but not empty. A pair of scribes are doing final inventory checks by lantern light. One of them yawns so hard his stylus falls into a pile of barley. You pretend to belong and glance over the tablet they're working on. It's a tally of beer shipments: origin, recipient, volume, seal ID. Nothing out of place until you spot a duplicated seal. 2 jugs, 2 destinations, same seal impression. "Someone got lazy," the sleepy scribe mutters, flipping the tablet over. "Probably that new guy from Lagash." You don't say a word, but your brain is whirring. Every beer jug, every barley sack, every drop of oil that moves through this temple is supposed to be documented, sealed, and witnessed. That's how they keep order in a city where beer is currency and memory is made of mud. And yet, cracks are showing. One of the scribes pulls out a master tablet, a massive sun-baked slab with every known seal imprint logged for the temple's officials, breweries, transport crews, and ration administrators. It's like a Mesopotamian DMV database, but with fewer chariots and more foam. He squints. "Huh. What?" asks the other. "This seal," he says, tapping the tablet, "was revoked 3 weeks ago." Uh-oh. You casually back into the shadows and pretend to admire a wall relief. The image depicts 2 gods pouring water and presumably not swapping ration jugs in the night. Historians love to tell us how meticulous Sumerian records were, but the reality? They were only as reliable as the people wielding the stylus. And like any system, when it grows big enough, people start gaming it. There's even an old tablet unearthed from a storage vault in Nippur. that describes a temple audit. A priest noticed several beer jugs going missing and traced the problem to a scribe who'd copied seal impressions freehand, a Sumerian forgery. No stylus, pun intended. One quirky tidbit: some seals had micro symbols hidden in their designs, tiny indicators known only to the temple elite, not unlike watermarks or printer dots today. Miss one? You've got a fake on your hands and probably a one-way assignment to sewage duty. You ease away from the storage room and return to the temple courtyard, where moonlight paints long lines between the stone pillars. It's quiet again, still. But the stillness hums with all the unseen things: hidden deals, forged seals, clerical fudging with plausible deniability. You find yourself beside the transport registry wall, where dozens of tablets hang by cords, each one linked to a delivery made in the past week. You spot one marked with 3 seals, each neatly pressed, but then your eye catches something strange: a jug symbol with a slanted wedge, unlike the rest. You check again. Yep. Someone pressed the stylus crooked. Whether out of laziness, nervousness, or cover-up, you don't know. But it's there, like a subtle whisper. I did this, and no one noticed. Yet. You step back and think about the system as a whole. It's elegant, in theory. A closed loop of tokens, tablets, seals, jugs, and records. But at the center, people. Tired, hungry, clever people. People who know that if they tweak the record just a little, just one wedge, one reused seal, they might eat better that week, or win a favor, or dodge a punishment. And the scribes, they know it too. That's why they scribble margins, flag anomalies, whisper about ratios over beer. They are both gatekeepers and participants, observers and quiet accomplices. You pass by the reed-lined doorway of the disciplinary chamber, usually empty. Tonight, it isn't. Inside, a young scribe sits cross-legged before 3 cracked tablets. A supervisor looms, hands behind his back. "These do not match," he says flatly. "Explain." The scribe hesitates. You don't stay to hear the outcome, but you wonder how many other nights unfolded like this, slow betrayals sealed in mud and uncovered in silence. Fraud not by ambition, but by fatigue, or loyalty, or quiet hunger. You return once more to the outer temple wall. The blank token you left earlier, still there, undisturbed. You reach down and turn it over, pressing a single crooked wedge into its center. A tribute to every mistake that somehow still holds the system together. A reminder that even in the world's oldest accounting system, someone's always fudging the numbers. The night deepens, and so does your sense that this civilization, this strange beer-soaked tablet counting, seal pressing marvel, is more complicated than the textbooks ever let on. You step away from the temple's outer ring and head toward the common quarters, where laborers sleep in clusters around shared courtyards, their sandals kicked off and their ration jugs tucked protectively under arms like sacred teddy bears. You're not here to eavesdrop. Well, okay, you are, because here in the soft whispers over dying coals and the low chuckles of half-drunk stonemasons, you can feel the truth. Beer isn't just sustenance, it's status. You settle near a small group playing a dice game. flat bones, charcoal marks, and a lot of arguing. One of them, bare-chested, sun-dark, eyes sharp, slaps down a die and grins. 3 throws says I get the brewer's cut this week, his friend snorts. Not unless you marry her. They all laugh, but it's not a joke. Everyone here knows that certain people get better beer. Thicker, foamier, maybe even strained. There's the worker's brew, coarse and soupy, and then there's the stuff you serve to priests, scribes, and visiting envoys. And even if you're technically owed the same volume, it's the quality that tells you who you are. One man, clearly half asleep, raises his mug and mutters, "Mine had twigs in it." Another nods sagely. That's how you know it's authentic. They're joking. Sort of. You recall something you saw earlier. A sealed jar in the temple labeled not just with volume, but with a special character. A kind of inverted wedge believed to mean refined or filtered. Not every jar gets that mark. Only the best ones. And here's a fun detail. Some brewers secretly set aside high-quality batches for personal favors. Not official bribes, of course. Just liquid appreciation. A particularly wide-shouldered man sitting nearby, clearly someone who moves rocks for a living, leans in. You know how my brother got that canal reassignment? 2 jugs of the good stuff, one for the foreman, one for the scribe. He raises his eyebrows. You think prayers get answered without help? You sip your own brew, still lukewarm and sediment heavy. Suddenly, it tastes like social purgatory. It's not just about perks either. Beer defines class. How much you get, when you get it, who serves it to you, whether it's handed over directly or left anonymously by the temple gate. There are even jokes etched on old pottery shards, rough little graffiti carvings mocking someone who received only half-Scylla swamp suds. Probably the world's first passive-aggressive Yelp review. Historians still debate how formal these beer tiers were. Were they documented or just understood? Some tablets list allocations clearly by worker role, but others are vague, like someone didn't want to put favoritism in writing. Smart. You stroll along the courtyard edge and spot an older woman ladling beer from a large communal jar. Around her, 3 young men sit attentively, letting her pour first, then accepting their shares without complaint. She speaks slowly, with quiet authority. "She's the ration matriarch," a younger man whispers to you. "Used to run the brewery near Eridu, knows who gets what." You watch her dole out each portion carefully. 1 ladle, pause. 2 ladles, nod. A small third pour for someone who carried bricks through the noon sun. It's not a science. It's a story told through foam. She catches you watching and smiles faintly. "You carry yourself like a mid-ranker," she says. 1.5 Sila, probably. Temple assigned, not spoiled, not forgotten. You're not sure whether to be flattered or insulted. You thank her, and she pours a small ladle into a bowl for you. This batch is darker, with a faint sweetness. You sip. It's definitely better. She notices your face and gives a soft chuckle. "Brewed for scribes. They say it helps with spelling." And suddenly you understand something crucial. Beer isn't just payment. It's communication. It says, "You worked hard today," or "You're being watched," or "The temple still remembers you." It's a liquid memo, passed hand to hand, mouth to mouth. You glance around and see this everywhere. a small child sipping from her father's bowl, a priest laughing softly over a mug with a chipped rim, a weaver tucking her sealed jug into a straw basket marked with a reed for easy ID. That's her batch. Everyone knows it. You don't mess with another person's beer. And here's another quirky detail. Some temples flavored their beer differently based on the day. A mash with date syrup on feast days. Extra malted bread after full moons. Possibly just tradition, possibly a religious pattern, or possibly boredom. Sumer had a lot of moon-related holidays. You finish your bowl slowly, letting the sediment settle to the bottom. Around you, the courtyard begins to quiet. Someone strums a stringed instrument, soft and uneven but soothing. A few workers begin curling into blankets. Others just lay back on woven mats, staring up at the stars. You do the same. The sky is impossibly clear. 1,000 pinpricks of light, each older than the tablets you saw today. And somewhere beneath all that, on this little patch of earth soaked in barley and memory, you feel the weight of it all. Beer is memory. It's an archive you can drink, a transaction that lives inside your stomach and inside the clay. It's not just about calories. It's about being counted. You close your eyes. Tomorrow, the scribes will record another batch. The brewers will chant another hymn, and someone, somewhere, will get just a little more than they were due, and smile. You awaken, or half awaken, really, to the sound of grain bins being pried open and a chorus of sleepy curses echoing through the granary corridor. The stars are still out, but Uruk is stirring again. Scribes shuffle past you, some yawning, others already muttering about ratios and pest infestations. You follow them back into the warehouse district, a maze of packed earth courtyards and heavy storage doors, each one sealed not just with clay, but with a kind of religious awe. This isn't just where the food is kept. This is where the gods live. At least, that's how it feels. Massive granaries tower above you, their walls blackened with time, their thresholds marked with cuneiform inscriptions dedicated to Enlil, Ninurta, and, yes, still, Ninkasi. Carved figurines stand guard at the entrances, lions, bulls, and strange hybrid deities with wide, staring eyes. Their gaze follows you like a guilt trip from someone you forgot to invite to dinner. You duck into a side chamber and find yourself in a grain registry office, a long, low room filled with tablets, scales, measuring rods, and more scribes than seems reasonable for this hour. A rat scurries by one of their sandals and is promptly ignored. The air smells like dust, ink, and dried barley. One scribe is meticulously comparing 2 tablets, line by line, while another heats a stylus over a candle for no discernible reason other than intimidation. They're discussing a shipment discrepancy. 4 gur left Nippur, one says. 3.5 arrived. That's a loss of half a gur, the other replies. No, the first sighs. That's a theft of half a gur. You decide not to linger. Further in, massive ceramic silos dominate the chamber. Each is labeled with symbols that combine practicality and ritual, like barley for bread, emergency flood stock, and for the gods' share. Do not sample. You try not to laugh. Someone definitely sampled that one. In fact, you notice faint footprints leading to a jar whose seal has been clumsily reapplied. The wedge marks are smudged. A newer stylus impression sits slightly askew. The deception is artless, but it's enough. you're beginning to realize that this is the nervous system of the Sumerian state. Not the temples, not the ziggurat, but these warehouses filled with barley, beer, and bureaucratic tension. The scribes here don't just tally food, they judge character, and they do so with terrifying efficiency. In a back alcove, an elder scribe is training an apprentice using a replica of an old warehouse tablet. You glance over his shoulder. The lines read something like 15 gur received, 12 distributed, 2 set aside, 1 lost to spoil. There's a faint symbol at the bottom, almost an emoji. It's a stylized skull, probably meaning recheck this. Or maybe, seriously, don't screw this up again. You ask about it. The elder squints. Some scribes used glyphs to track anomalies, easier to spot. He shrugs. Also, a little fun, makes it personal. You nod, imagining modern accountants doodling angry cats on spreadsheets. Some traditions, it seems, transcend time. As you move deeper into the granary's underbelly, you pass offering shelves, small alcoves stacked with miniature jars, incense cones, dried fish, and what appears to be a perfectly intact fig. Each offering is accompanied by a tiny inscription. To Enlil, may this grain be pleasing. To Ninkasi, may the brew never spoil. To the warehouse gods, please don't curse this batch. You pause at the last one. Apparently, even the most rational administrators hedge their bets, just in case. And here's the wild part. Archaeologists have found actual granary ghosts etched onto tablets, tiny, haunting sketches of skeletal figures standing near sacks of grain. Some believe they were symbolic warnings, watch your weight tallies, or be haunted by the loss. Others say they were real stories, that in times of shortage, people whispered of spirits guarding the barley. And you know what? After seeing the eyes on that clay figurine, you're not ruling it out. A young worker drops a jug of dried emmer. The room tenses. It doesn't break, but a few grains spill. Everyone glares. He mutters an apology and begins sweeping. There's no ceremony, no shouting, but you can feel the shame hover in the air like flour dust. In the rear of the granary, you find the archive vault, stone shelves lined with tablets so dry and old they're almost fused to the walls. Most of them are unreadable now, edges chipped, marks faded, ink worn by centuries of humidity and careless thumbs. But some still hold. You spot one etched with almost surgical precision. It's not a record, it's a prayer. May the barley rise, may the jars not crack, may the workers sweat, but not in vain. You stare at it for a while. You're not sure if it's hopeful or just institutional despair in poetic form. The scribe beside you nods, reading over your shoulder. We all want the same thing, enough grain, enough beer, no surprises. That's the system, isn't it? Not perfection, just stability. You get the same beer every day. The scribes get the same counts. The gods get their offerings, and the warehouses stay locked. It works. Mostly. You step back into the morning air, the sun now brushing the tops of the mud brick towers. Uruk begins to hum again, and all across the city, people are waking up, collecting tokens, queuing for rations, cursing spoilage, and raising tiny jars in silent thanks to invisible gods. It all depends on this vast network of record-keeping, grain-watching, jar-labeling humans who spend their lives making sure no one gets more or less than they deserve. And that, apparently, includes ghosts. The sun now climbs higher, tilting its golden gaze over Uruk's eastern walls. The morning haze is lifting, revealing the bustle of a city awakening. Scribes trudging into tablet rooms, brewers sweeping yesterday's grain hulls into the alley, and a very stubborn goat refusing to move from the entrance of the temple kitchen. You slip once more into the scribe archives, now louder, more crowded. Today, the air crackles with the dry rustle of reed styluses and whispered curses about clay supply. But there's something else in the atmosphere, too. A strange quiet around one particular table, where an elder scribe sits with a chipped, pale tablet cradled in both hands. You edge closer, the murmurs sharpening into fragments. Last recorded ration entry. Sealed before the fire. Intact, but it's the last one. He lays it down gently, as if it might disintegrate from breath alone. You lean in. The tablet is ordinary looking, small, worn. The wedge marks are simple, repetitive, just barley, beer, jars, dates, and a scribal seal pressed lightly at the bottom. But its finality is overwhelming. This is the last record from a particular storeroom, one that hasn't existed in centuries. You're holding the end of an era, and no one wrote after it. The scribe speaks softly. After this, no more allocations were logged. Fire, flood, maybe the workers just stopped coming. He shrugs. It's the kind of shrug that carries 5 millennia of unanswered questions. You sit beside him, both of you staring at the final line. 1 jar barley beer issued to an Atum stone hauler. That's it. That's the final name ever etched in that particular corner of clay bureaucracy. And it hits you every system ends. Some tablets are never finished. Some are shattered mid-entry. Others are left blank, never impressed, sitting silently on shelves until the sun turns them to dust. You wander to the rear shelves where the obsolete forms live, templates for bulla, token impressions, and even early pictographs no longer used. You spot a faded symbol for raven, back when that apparently meant spoiled batch. Someone drew a tiny wing beside it, half joke, half warning. The walls here aren't just lined with clay. They're lined with quiet failure, systems phased out, formats abandoned, symbols that no longer translate. And yet, even these speak. You pick up one of the oldest tablets, rough and crude. The barley sign looks like a child's doodle, but there it is. An attempt, a record, a declaration of someone's place in the machine. Then, as if sensing your melancholy, a young apprentice walks past, muttering, "The grain allocation table is broken again." You blink. Wait, again? Apparently, not everything has changed. You follow the voice to the outer courtyard where a few confused workers are milling about. One is holding a ration token, but the scribe at the table can't find a matching record. "Your mark's expired," he says, nose buried in his tablet. "It was issued yesterday." The scribe doesn't look up. Yesterday was last cycle. This is new cycle. You step away, holding in your laughter. Some things never change. Administration is eternal, but logic is optional. Back near the brewer's path, the work is slower now. Someone's sweeping old grain dust into a pit. Another pours out a half jug of spoiled mash. You smell it before you see it, sour, heavy, and defeated. An old brewer sighs. "Too hot this week. Yeast turned spiteful." She scribbles a note into the clay with her nail. "Batch 7. discarded, Ninkasi, forgive us. You feel that one. The temple foreman arrives soon after, carrying a small stack of new format tablets. Thin, crisp, stylized. The wedge marks are cleaner now, more symbols, more abstraction. The barley sign no longer looks like barley. It looks like a box, or a bird's footprint, or possibly a very tired triangle. He glances at the old tablets being shelved and shakes his head. We're retiring the old format, he tells a nearby assistant. Too slow, too easy to smudge. And just like that, a writing system dies, not with ceremony, not with poetry, just a quiet decision by someone with seniority. You trace your fingers along the surface of one of the older tablets, the barley symbol still faintly warm from the morning sun. It once meant everything. Now it means nothing. Except to you. Except to whoever else might stumble across this shelf 5 centuries from now. Historians still argue whether this transition was political, practical, or purely aesthetic. But you suspect it was the same reason anyone changes a form. Someone got annoyed, and someone else said, fine. By mid-morning, workers are already adjusting to the new system. The tokens are all but gone now. One of the scribes jokingly rolls a bulla across the table. It rattles. The others laugh. Remember when we had to open these things? Remember when they exploded in the kiln? Remember when someone swallowed one? Wait, what? You raise an eyebrow, but no one explains. Probably best not to ask. In the final chamber, you find a single shelf marked with an unfamiliar symbol, 2 crossing lines inside a circle. You peer closer. This shelf holds broken tablets that were once evidence. Complaints, records of arguments, overpayments, miscounted jars, and one suspicious line that reads, "Worker claimed double ration due to injury, no witnesses." Each one tells a story of human messiness, and yet none of them are official anymore. Just fragments. You find one tiny tablet with only 3 marks: barley, beer, and a name. Abba Tutu. No date, no seal, probably never entered into a registry. Just one final drink for one final person. You leave it where you found it, and as the sun climbs higher, you step back out of the archives, knowing that somewhere beneath your feet lie thousands more tablets, still waiting. Undiscovered, undecoded, just sitting in silence, dreaming of the last beer ever poured in their name. The heat has taken over now. The streets shimmer, the reeds droop, and the scent of damp clay rises from the city walls like a warning that it's time to slow down. You drift through Uruk's quieter paths, alleys where no scribes bark corrections, no brewers measure foam levels, and the only sound is the soft crunch of sandals on sun-baked earth. This is where the records end and the memories begin. You find yourself in the outskirts, among old storage yards and silenced granaries, where fig trees push through cracked walls and dogs sleep in the shade of broken kilns. The architecture fades here. The clean edges of bureaucracy melt into ruins that feel haunted, but not hostile, more like they're just waiting to be remembered. You press your hand to a brick still bearing a faint inscription, a barley sign, nothing fancy, just a mark to say, this belonged to the system, but now it belongs to the dust. You settle onto a low, sun-warmed bench carved into stone. No one's here, not even a cat. You exhale. For a moment, it's just you, the stillness, and a history that never asked to be preserved, yet somehow was. Your fingers absent-mindedly trace patterns in the dirt. One wedge, two wedges, curved line, like a ghost version of the ancient script. You're not even sure what you're writing. Maybe your own name, maybe beer, maybe help. I'm trapped in a 5,000-year-old accounting dream. Whatever it is, it's peaceful because it wasn't just about the beer or the tokens or the barley tallies scratched into tablet after tablet. It was about connection, about trust, about making sure someone somewhere knew how many jars you earned, even if they couldn't remember your face. And here's the part that sticks with you. All those scribes and workers and brewers, none of them thought their marks would last. They weren't writing for the future. They were just surviving the day, just making sure the rations lined up, that no one went without, that the gods weren't slighted, and that the jar wasn't cracked when it got to the laborer who needed it. You watch a lizard scurry across a sunbeam and pause on a warm ledge. That little guy is now more up to date than half the city's inventory was at its peak. And still, you smile, because despite everything, the chaos, the confusion, the disappearing records, the ghost scribbles on broken tablets, the system worked. For a while, not perfectly, not forever, but well enough to keep people alive, fed, calm, even happy sometimes if the foam was just right. Historians still argue whether the invention of writing was driven more by trade than by poetry, whether we wanted to count jars more than we wanted to tell stories. But you've seen the truth now, haven't you? We did both. We used the same tools to say, "You owe me 5 beers, and may the gods bless this batch." We logged deliveries and whispered prayers onto the same lumps of clay. And in doing so, we left behind not just data, but emotion, stamped, fired, and buried in the earth like tiny time capsules of ancient humanity. You lean back, the breeze picks up a little, the sky fades from blazing white to soft gold. Someone in the distance bangs a drum. Someone else laughs. You smell fresh bread. Time, for once, slows down. You think of that final ration record, an Adam the stone hauler, a name preserved by accident, or maybe not. Maybe someone knew that one last beer had to be remembered, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough. The last jar, the final token, the end of the clay age. So now, just breathe. You've wandered through the dust of temples, the shadows of ancient granaries, and the faint scent of barley still drifting from broken pots. You've traced forgotten wedge marks with your fingertips, listened to sleepy scribes argue over half jars, and even stood quietly among gods carved from clay and hope. It's over now. The tablets are set down, the tokens have all been counted, and the beer, frothy, sacred, ordinary beer, is no longer boiling in the fire pits, but resting in cool shadows, untouched. Let it all fade. Let the soft hum of that world, so old, so patient, settle into your breath. You're not tallying anymore, not checking symbols or hunting down fraud. You're just here, safe and still, in the long exhale of a story that wasn't about power or kings or conquest, but about barley and the simple, stubborn people who cared enough to write it down. They didn't know you'd be here. They never meant for their clumsy marks and forgotten prayers to last this long. But somehow they did. And now you've seen them, heard them, sat beside them as the day wound down. Let that comfort you. Let the flicker of oil lamps, the whisper of clay on reed, the hush of sand shifting through cracks guide you to rest. And if you dream tonight, maybe you'll find yourself there again, somewhere in Uruk, waiting in line, holding a smooth token in your hand, listening for your name to be called just once more.